bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Donna Davidson. I practice campaign finance and election law. I went to law school a little later in life, so I graduated at the age of 32. And that's okay, you can do the math. I've been involved in politics since I was in my 20s, so yes, it's been more than 30 years. I really do love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I had the honor of working for then the only Republican statewide office holder, Rick Perry, when he was ag commissioner. Wow. They sent me to college to work under George W. Bush, where I had the opportunity to work with Al Gonzalez, who later became Attorney General of the United States. I learned from him, so they said I came home when Rick Perry became Lieutenant Governor. I was his general counsel. When then Governor Bush became president, I was then able to make sure that all our I's were dotted, T's were crossed, oath of office taken care of, filed with the Secretary of State when Rick Perry became governor. So that's how far back I go in Republican Party politics. I have been the wife of a candidate, and I have been a candidate. I have been a behind-the-scenes person, and I can tell you this, I am much more comfortable being a behind-the-scenes person. Now, does anybody have a question why I might have a person well-dressed behind bars to start this presentation?
We don't know campaign finance.
Campaign finance violations. Can you believe that you could go to jail for it?
Yeah.
How many believe you can go to jail for it? How many think you can't go to jail for it? Okay, I want to tell you a story. It was Thanksgiving. I generally represent only Republicans. If there is no Republican in a race, I may take on, like there was a Democrat primary, and I did the recount for that. This happened to be somebody who was no longer a candidate for governor, who was either Green Party, Libertarian, some other party, but a friend of ours, mutual friend, said, Donna, I need your help. My friend has just been arrested and thrown in jail, and it's for election fraud. And I thought, election fraud, oh my gosh, he voted illegally, he voted in another primary after declaring something happened, election fraud. The day was Monday before Thanksgiving Thursday. That happened to be his mother's birthday. He was out running errands and getting her a last-minute birthday present. He did not get released from jail until 11:30 that night. I'll tell you the rest of the story now that I've got your attention. Okay, campaign ethics. What do you need to do? You need to meet the requirements. What are those? We'll talk about it. You need to make the reports. What are those? We'll talk about it. And we want to maximize the results. What does that mean by maximizing the results? Come on, people. Winning the election. That's the bottom line. Okay, so meeting the requirements. Are there constitutional requirements for your office? Do you have to meet certain requisites that are outlined in the Texas Constitution? What about the statutes? Do you need to meet those? If you're a precinct chairman, if you're an activist, if you're thinking about running for office, if you'll never run for office, you're here on a Saturday, and it makes a difference that you understand what's going on, because you might be the person doing opposition research for somebody. You might not like a Democrat that's running for something, and you want to make sure you understand these things, okay? So it's not just for candidates. Practical, this part is for the candidate. If your family is not 200% behind you, beware. That can cause some issues. That's one of the practical considerations. So, let's say you are running for Texas Senate. There are constitutional provisions that you have to have been a resident of this state 5 years next preceding the election. So if somebody moves to Texas and they want to run for Texas Senate, they've got to meet this constitutional requirement. There is a question for some as to what constitutes residency. It's in the election code defined. I've had challenges on residency for state senators. I've had them for city council candidates. It runs the gamut. Make sure people meet the qualifications. If you're running for state representative, there's also constitutional provisions that you need to be aware of. And if you're looking for a problem for someone that you oppose, it could be from any party, then you just need to make sure you're aware of what those requirements are. Eligibility. You have to be eligible to run for office. So for public office, you have to be a United States citizen. That's not difficult. You have to be 18 years of age or older, unless what the Constitution says an older age, right?
President.
You have not been determined by a final judgment of a court exercising probate jurisdiction to have been totally mentally incapacitated or partially mentally incapacitated. A court, not your family, okay? And now you have to have resided continuously in the state for 12 months and in the territory from the office. Territory. We're in Texas. What does territory mean? Precinct, district. Okay, good. It's not territory. It just means, what is it called? We had an entire discussion on what a precinct is, because obviously county commissioners run in precincts. But we also have precincts where we have precinct chairmen. They're not the same thing. But the territory from which you're running. Okay, for a candidate whose name is to appear on the general election ballot, there are certain things, etc. I have served as outside counsel to the Republican Party in Texas for the last several election cycles to ensure that the ballot applications are filed properly. If it's not, we send it back so that the opposing parties can't try to say that our guys are not eligible. And gals. Okay, so where do you find out information? The Texas Secretary of State, and that office is currently vacant, and I don't know when you'll be watching this video, if you're watching later, but I will take a personal privilege if I could. David Whitley is a dear friend who goes to my church, and I think it was a loss for Texas that he was not confirmed as Secretary of State. However, this website's still up, and you can go and find the elections division section. If you're a precinct chair and you're helping a candidate who doesn't know what's going on, this is going to be invaluable for you. This is a resource. The qualifications for office are also in a synopsized fashion here. So you notice right on this far side it says 2016 and 2018. It has not been updated for 2020. If something passed during this legislative session, it does not become law until, does everybody know what day? It's, okay, Father's Day is the last day that the governor can veto a bill. We are not a pocket veto kind of democracy, well, constitutional republic here in Texas. We actually have the system where if he does not veto the law, it will become law without a signature. But Father's Day is the last day. Then when will it become effective? A lot of you said September 1. That's for most. Some might become effective immediately. Be aware and then watch for the updates. Running for local office. There are going to be some of you that maybe someday are going to run for city council or something. You just need to know school district, school board, municipal offices, all of the terms, qualifications, and what you do in the event of a vacancy, how you fill it, who gets appointed. All of that can be found on the Secretary of State's website. Does anybody have any questions on meeting the requirements? How many of you are precinct chairs? How many of you are thinking maybe someday you'll run for public office? What happens if a precinct chair files to run for public office?
Immediately surrender the position.
Okay, you immediately surrender the position. What if you file for precinct chair and then you file for public office? Can you do that? In the same, okay, if you file for precinct chair and we had this happen, and then you decide you're gonna run for office, you need to withdraw that precinct chair ballot application. You know why? Because that's the office that you're running for unless you withdraw. So you can't run for that other office. You can only be on the ballot once. Okay, making the reports. There are, yes sir.
I know in Congress, there's
That is correct. In Congress, and you notice mine is very state specific. In Congress, you do not have to live in the district. It's my understanding that Wendy Davis is possibly going to run against Chip Roy. Chip Roy's district is closer to San Antonio, part of Hays County. I don't even know if Chip actually lives in the district himself because you're not required to, but he lives close. I don't know that Wendy Davis has moved, but that was one of the latest rumors, and that's because in Congress, the United States Constitution trumps and obviously gives what the parameters are and the qualifications are for that. So if it says you have to have continuously resided in a state statute, but you're running for Congress, the United States Constitution comes first. Make sense? Great point. Okay, campaign treasurer. I have really beat some people over the head with this. So, how much did you pay to come here today?
20.
Okay, is that a political expenditure?
Yes.
Oh, really?
It is.
Could it be? Might it be? Is this a political event?
No.
But it's sponsored by a 501c3.
Yeah.
But what are you learning? Are you listening? A campaign treasurer appointment. There's no such thing as an exploratory committee in state law. You hear about exploratory committees all the time. I'm thinking about running for Congress. I'm thinking about running for president. I'm thinking about doing this, that, or the other. Not in Texas. You better have a campaign treasurer appointment on file before you make an expenditure. I had a client. He is a businessman. And I'll say he. I'm old-fashioned. He covers everybody, okay? He is a businessman. He decides to get his name on every internet website. So I'll use me as the example, DonnaDavidson.com, DonnaDavidson.net, DonnaDavidson.org, DonnaDavidson.law, Donna Davidson, whatever. Bought all of those. Now, why would you do that as a businessman? Because you don't want somebody else using your domain. Do you want DonnaDavidson.com to say bad things about me as an attorney? And what do people do nowadays? They're searching for your name, and if somebody can sabotage you, won't they? It is not paranoia if they are out to get you. Okay, so he had done that. Good businessman, good business practice. Later, he decides to run for office. About 4 or 5 months later, sworn complaint before the Texas Ethics Commission saying that he made a political expenditure before he had a campaign treasurer appointment on file. You know what added to that? We had faxed his campaign treasurer appointment to both numbers for the Texas Ethics Commission, received confirmation that the facsimile transmission was received. They said, hey, Donna, can you follow up? They had hired me. And I said, okay, you got the campaign treasurer appointment on file? Yes. I called them to go get this file stamped copy. There was none. There was no record of the campaign treasurer appointment. So I had to defend my client because, of course, they started making expenditures the day that they received the confirmation of the fax being filed. If you mail it in, if you don't mail it to the right address, is that a valid campaign treasurer appointment? No. If you mail it to the right address, it is then effective the date of the postmark. So you're okay. Do you hear all these little traps? You gotta understand, it's not an easy process. So campaign treasurer, campaign finance. You gotta know how much money you have. Can you accept anonymous contributions in Texas?
No.
Nope, that was easy. How can you accept anonymous campaign contributions federally?
Under 100?
Yes. 529?
Under 50?
Okay, so I don't know enough about the federal to go there very deeply, but there is a certain minimum that you can accept anonymous. Do not get the state and federal confused. Now you understand why I only do state. Because I want to know and I want to be able to give a definitive answer when I've got somebody calling. Right, Anthony?
That's right.
Right. Personal finance. Okay. If you don't want anybody to know you have a dependent that has a job and where they work, if you don't want anybody to know what your mutual funds are, if you don't want anybody to know who your renters are and the rental property that you get income from, If you don't want anybody to know what your boards and positions are, you don't run for office because a personal financial statement is required of you. Yes. Everybody needs to know what you do. So, the Texas Ethics Commission has just updated their website. And this is what it looks like. So, this is another great resource. And remember, you'll be getting these PowerPoints in PDF or something that you'll have access to later. But feel free to take notes, but pay more attention to what I'm saying than where to go. Okay, so with these resources, you can find out about political advertising rules. Do precinct chairmen fall under political advertising rules?
Yes.
Somebody said yes.
Precinct chair?
Did somebody say no?
Nope, no.
Somebody said I don't know. All those in favor of political advertising disclosure being applicable to precinct chairs, say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Nice.
Oh, y'all are so non-committal. Okay, if you are a precinct chair, you don't necessarily have personal financial statements or campaign finance forms that you have to fill out. But if you make signs and you go buy signs and you pay somebody for signs, you have to have a political advertising disclaimer. And you need to put the transportation code information on it as well. So there are a lot of things that will not apply to you, like lobbying, etc. The opinion statutes and rules, there are more than 500 opinions that try to explain what they've been asked, and some of them are very specific, some of them are kind of crazy. Filing reports, even if you're a local filer, you can use the Texas Ethics Commission's website to file reports. Who are local filers? Those are like county commissioner candidates, school board candidates, municipal candidates. Training, they actually offer online training. Woohoo! Does anybody do it?
Nope.
They're always calling me. Except Brian. Way to go, Brian. Okay. Forms and instructions. There are actually guides, there are forms, there are instructions. Do they always make sense?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Feel free to call me. Did everybody get my business card? Now's a good time to say. If you got my business card, or if you're looking at this video, make sure you get my phone number or my email address off of the slides. I will give you, and this is not a contribution, okay? This is the way I do business. I will give you an hour up to of my time to help you be the best you can be. You don't have to be a candidate. You can be just somebody interested and have questions. If you need my business card, there are some here on the sign-in table. Yes, I will do that because my husband allows me to do that because he's the primary breadwinner. My money goes to keep my daughter in a classical Christian school. So, and to college, right? But I believe in what we're doing, and I will give you of my time because we need to make sure we're electing Republicans. All right, you can also search campaign finance reports and go look for who did something wrong. If you know what you're doing right, be careful because what happens when you point at somebody?
Point right back.
3 fingers are pointing right back at you. So make sure your reports are fine before you start looking at everybody else's reports to look for mistakes, which has happened to a client. Okay, campaign finance. Generally in Texas, no contribution limits. Okay, who lives in Austin? If you wanted to give money to an Austin City Council candidate, you have to make sure you're under the limitations. If anybody contributed to my campaign when I was running for 3rd Court of Appeals Place 6, judicial candidates have some limitations, okay? Generally, you don't. Generally, school board, municipal utility district board, PEC is not a public entity. If you're voting for somebody there, they're a private organization, so that doesn't apply, but they run for office. But you need to know that basically you can accept almost any amount of money, but you cannot take money from corporations. And I know probably most of us would never be offered money by a labor union, so we're okay on that. You have to report pretty much every contribution and expenditure. I used to have an amount in here. The Texas Ethics Commission just discovered recently that there is a law in the Texas Government Code that they were supposed to have been complying with since their inception. And what did it have to do with? Changing the thresholds for reporting as you go to keep up with inflation. So I used to have $50.01 on this slide. If the rule that they've just passed to implement this government code statute goes into effect in January, it'll be $90. You just have to be aware, make sure you've got a detailed-oriented person helping you with your reports. Anonymous contributions. If I were to take a sack or an empty Chick-fil-A box and I pass it around and say, we want to support all of our candidates, can I do that?
No.
No. But if our candidates happen to have envelopes that are already pre-addressed, and let's say nobody had any checks, let's say nobody carries a checkbook anymore, and let's say they didn't have the capacity to do it electronically. If you had green money on you, which still exists, some people still have, how much green money could you give a candidate?
90 with inflation.
Okay, this is really good. Thank you for participating. Who said 100? Ding, 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 ding. You win. $100 in cash per reporting period. If there's a primary, that's one reporting period. If there's a primary runoff, that's a second reporting period. If then the general election you make it that far, that's a third reporting period. Yes,
So
ma'am.
it's not per filing, like per quarter. I mean, you have the June 30th filing, and you have to file by July 15th before you have another one in the fall.
Right. So the question was regarding like the semi-annual report, etc. So when you're not in election season and it's just during the semi-annual period, the periods covered are half a year, and then that is $100 for that whole 6-month period. And technically, is anybody a candidate on the ballot yet?
No.
No. When does that happen?
December.
By the end of December. And when do precinct chairmen get to start filing? Usually in September. Nobody's officially a candidate, but if you've got the paperwork on file with the Ethics Commission, do they consider you a candidate? Yes. Can you act like a candidate?
Yes.
Can you raise money?
Yes.
Can you spend money?
Yes.
Are there any limits to how much you can spend because you're not a candidate yet? No. Okay, good. Y'all are paying attention. Yes, ma'am. Per person. So it's per person. So let's say, and somebody did this to me, they gave me $200 in cash because I don't know why. And I said, well, I can accept 100 of that. And what did I do with the other 100?
Gave it to his friend.
I actually gave it back to him and said, do you have your checkbook? And then he gave me a check for the other 100. That's how you can still be in compliance. Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about the envelope, you're saying that the $100 would go in the envelope with the donor's name, co-make herself.
Yes, that is correct. If you put it in the envelope and get all the information, now some require everything to be there. I would suggest you ask for everything and then follow up if you have to have certain things for your report. So if you're running for state representative, if it's $500 or more, you have to have the job title, occupation, and employer. If you're running a general purpose political action committee or part of one like TFRW, you have to make sure that you're keeping track of what the information is for your contributors. Okay, there is no personal use of contributions. So let's say somebody's scoping out an opponent and they see on the campaign finance report that they've paid for dry cleaning. Is that a permissible use of campaign funds?
Yes.
You know, somebody is almost like a lawyer when they say it depends. I love that. Okay. Actually, the answer on this one has been answered by one of those 500 ethics advisory opinions. No, you cannot pay for dry cleaning with it generally. I would argue that if you had to rent a tux or you had to rent a dress for a gala or some other important event that was totally political, you paid for the tickets with political money. Like, everybody doesn't have to get dressed up for the Reagan Gala, but you know what I'm saying, right? if you had to go and you had to get something, maybe. What about childcare?
No.
Oh, that's maybe, I made the news recently.
That made the news recently.
Gosh.
If the only reason you need childcare is because you're going to do something for a political purpose and you would normally not have been able to do that, but for the fact that you're a candidate and you wouldn't have been going, but for the fact you're a candidate, yes. Does that open up a can of worms? Yes. Be careful. And then the reason why you check, double check, and triple check your campaign finance report is because somebody else is going to be doing that too. And that's the opposition. So, and that goes in the primary too. There were 4 of us that were running. I knew what everybody had. I knew where they were getting it from, and I knew when they made mistakes. I definitely knew when they were making mistakes. I didn't turn anybody in, but that's just me. Okay, credit card expenditures. Now, if you make a credit card expenditure, does it have to be a campaign credit card? What if it's your personal credit card? You have to actually put it on its own Schedule F4. Amazing. It can be your own credit card. It doesn't matter. Some cities and counties require personal financial statements. For example, there's a constable candidate that I've represented in Travis County who wasn't sure if he had to file a personal financial statement. And it was hard to find where it was required. But did he? Yes. Not by statute, county. So you check for any restrictions or limitations for fundraising for the office that you're seeking or for the office that you're researching, okay? Make sure you know. And our website's considered political advertising?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, a little constable candidate in a county that shall remain unnamed, it was not Travis, said, vote for me, this guy's a scoundrel, you don't want to elect him, I don't like him, vote for me. He got a sworn complaint filed against him because it didn't say authorized or paid for by on his Facebook page. Does anybody pay for Facebook?
No.
You can bolster. If you bolster, then you need to make sure you've got the advertising disclaimer, okay? But nobody advertises on nobody pays for Facebook. So we got a rule passed recently to cover the letterhead exception that if you can tell who it is, like if it's my page, and I say vote for me, guess who authorized it?
You.
I did. All right, make the reports. Campaign treasurer, essential. Campaign finance reports, double check them. And personal financial statements, look at them closely because somebody else will be looking through a magnifying glass, making sure that they find your mistakes. Okay? Any questions on making the reports? Yes? How do you handle in-kind? You have to value them. So let's say, for example, somebody hosts a fundraiser, and several of you in this room host things for people, Elise. Okay, so when somebody hosts something, they need to keep track of all their expenses, and then they let you know what the total cost was for the refreshments, drinks, food, valet parking if they had to pay for something like that. And then the in-kind is reported on Schedule A2. And that value, and you provide a good description of it, okay? So that's what happens with that. Was there another question over here? Yes, sir.
Campaign treasurer, for those who are thinking about 2020, your comment about this event, do we have to wait till 2022 now, or we don't have a campaign treasurer on file? What's the rule?
Okay, this is a very interesting question because I was saying something about the campaign treasurer appointment, and what if you think that you might end up running in 2020, and is this going to potentially, because it was $35, is this considered a political expenditure? Depends on who knows that you paid the $35 to come. Depends on if you report the $35, which you won't be reporting it because your campaign treasurer appointment is the first day that you trigger the reporting requirement. But if somebody wants to cause you trouble and you do run and they know that you were here, they could try to cause you trouble for that. That's why I used that domain name example. That wasn't even a political expenditure. That was totally a business expenditure. The way that it's defined in the statute, it can be before, during, or after a campaign. That's what's covered. So if you run in 2022, you're still made the expenditure in 2019.
But isn't there some type of an intent requirement in the law?
Is there an intent requirement? It does not have an intent requirement on a political expenditure. It just says, the intent, obviously this is a political campaign training. So I think anybody could easily characterize it as that. If you're a precinct chairman and then you end up running for office later, you're probably covered as a precinct chairman because you need to know about all this, right? So that was just a normal political expenditure in the course of you being a precinct chairman. That could be a great argument. Somebody could cause trouble for you, they might not. Yes, ma'am.
Disclose it.
Oh, if you disclose it, well, if you have a campaign treasurer appointment on file, you start your reporting from the day of the appointment, so you can't.
I understand that, but even after you've gone through that a month or week,
So you say on the campaign treasurer appointment, you use that date, that would be kind of hard to do. The report wouldn't let you do that. Yes, ma'am.
I get one confused about it.
Oh,
Do we need to report this, or is it just a choice, and then just to get money back?
okay, it doesn't get you any money back. So the question is it just a choice about the campaign treasurer appointment? I am telling you what the law says. I am telling you that on your campaign treasurer appointment, if you try to go back, like let's say you're running for state representative and you try to insert a date that's prior to your campaign treasurer appointment, it won't physically let you. Can you make an annotation that you made this expense? Yes, you can. I am trying to let you know what the law is, and we can talk about it if you find yourself, you know that hour I told you about? Now do you understand why? Okay, good. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait just a second. Yes, go ahead and finish your question.
My question was, okay, I paid for this.
Yes.
I'm gonna run for public office in 2020.
Yes.
Do I have to report out here that I spent this money, or if I'm this year to learn?
Are you a precinct chair?
No.
So you're actually, okay. Did everybody look on the registration where it says if you're thinking about running for office, please contact Donna Davidson at dgdlawfirm.com? Missed it?
So I called.
If you're running for non-federal office, you know why? It was so we wouldn't have this question. Okay? So I would suggest, and we can visit about that, and those of you on the video, that was why I did that. So my number, Donna at dgdlawfirm.com. Let's talk about that, and we'll figure it out. If you're really going to run, we need to figure out what's best for you and how to do that. And it depends on what you're running for, too. Okay. Yes.
You have volunteers that used to work on campaigns, say decades ago, and they're helping you now as a favor, as a friend. Does that have to be reported? Is there time to be reported?
Okay, time does not, personal services do not have to be reported in Texas. Excellent question. So the people that, there was somebody that offered to drive me to San Angelo and back, because you know how far that is, right guys? And they said, oh Donna, you could spend your time better fundraising, which I hated doing. Don't run for office if you can't ask for money. But they did say, we want to drive you up and back. Now, would I have had to report that? If I paid for their gas, if I paid for something, yes. If they did it as a volunteer, if they said, I'm just doing this for you, their personal service of driving would not have been a reportable contribution. It's still a contribution, just like a political expenditure is still a political expenditure, but that is non-reportable. So volunteering, that's not reportable. I'm very careful with my clients who are statewide office holders, state representatives, state senators. During the legislative session, there's a moratorium period. My time is of value. Of value is a contribution when you give something of value. Unfortunately, they probably get mad at me every moratorium period because I nickel and dime them to death. Because I do not want to have made a contribution to them in violation of the moratorium period, even though I'm just doing it as a, quote, volunteer. I just don't volunteer during that period of time for them. And then I make it up for them later. I'm very generous with that free time. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Or you can talk about legal, I run into a lot of confusion around campaign treasurer
Oh, this is a great question on campaign treasurer appointment. Okay. Some people say that you should get someone with credibility. Okay. Who did I say that I worked for as ag commissioner, as lieutenant governor, as governor, when he was Rick Perry? Okay. Could I get Rick Perry as my campaign treasurer? Probably, except he's energy secretary, right? So who's the next best thing? Mike Toomey. So I got Mike Toomey as my campaign treasurer, name only. He never filed a report for me. He has no civil or criminal liability for that, okay? I do. So I did my own reports. I could have named my husband. I could have named myself my own campaign treasurer. It depends on what your consultants, what your family wants to do. The person who has civil and criminal liability for the campaign office holder account is the campaign office holder. If there's Texans for Donna Davidson or district, whatever for Donna Davidson, a group, that becomes something called a specific purpose political action committee. That's a separate committee. That's a separate entity. And you still have to file the campaign office holder account. And then that campaign treasurer has civil and criminal liability. But does that mean that that person still has to file the reports or prepare the reports? No. There are all sorts of people that prepare reports for funds. There are CPA firms. There are independent contractors that are out there doing things like that. So you just authorize them to do it if that's what you choose to do. Great question. Any others? Okay. All right, maximize the results. Okay, what did we talk about this morning? You want to focus on your message and avoid the gotchas. Everything that I've been talking about pretty much is a gotcha. I've been involved in litigation, I've been involved in recounts, I've been involved in all sorts of things. Somebody's always trying to trip you up. Again, like I said, it is not paranoia if they are out to get you. They might want to try to knock you off the ballot because they can't win at the ballot box what they could try to win at the courthouse. Okay, you probably can't see this, but do you see what that arrow is pointing to? Okay, can you see on top of the money kind of a little camera and it says can stock? Would you believe that that's a watermark? You can't just use materials, and I did pay for this. So I wanted to show you, I did pay for this. But I had a candidate who thought they could take a picture from a magazine that was a very unflattering photograph of their opponent and use it in their campaign materials. Guess what? We're Republicans, party personal responsibility, we don't steal. That is stealing. That's violating copyright. We don't do that. Okay, maximizing the results. Make sure your political advertising disclaimers are visible. We go down to the fact that FOR has to be in at least half the font size of the office for which you're running. You can't say re-elect if you were appointed to a position and then you're running for it. You have to say keep. So use the proper disclaimer language. All of that is available on the Ethics Commission website. They also have transportation code language when you're doing your little yard signs. You have to say they have to be out of the right-of-way. Why? Because the Texas Department of Transportation will pick them up. Back in the 90s, when my husband was running for Justice of the Peace in Southwest Travis County, there was a sign war. Kirk Watson was the Travis County Democrats county chair at the time. He said that my husband was trying to cause voter confusion. Greg Davidson was running against incumbent Democrat Scott Davis. Excuse me? And then we told all our people not to put it in the right-of-ways, and we found people were taking our signs and putting them in the right-of-ways. TxDOT then contacted us and told us what the ransom money, what we would have to pay to get them released. I've been told that now they just throw them away. That's a very expensive mistake, but that did happen in Southwest Travis County not too long ago, but long enough ago that, it was in the 90s. Okay, so follow the laws relating to signs. That is imperative. Make sure your people know where they can put the signs. Finally, what is your target? A legal choice is not necessarily an ethical choice. And that's part of what I was alluding to just a few minutes ago when I said, talk to me privately about how you're going to report something. You always shoot for the highest standard. I will always say do more than is required by the law. There are some of my clients that do that and some of my clients that don't. But I say you should aim for the center of the target. Does anybody shoot darts, guns, arrows, anything? Okay, where do you aim?
Bullseye.
What's the point?
The bullseye.
The bullseye, exactly. So the outer rim, the outer part of the bullseye, to me is the legal minimum. Are you gonna shoot for the legal minimum, or are you gonna shoot for the bullseye? And remember, even though nobody has newspapers nowadays, my daughter was featured because she's a golfer in something, and we showed her the newspaper to show it to her. She goes, "Where's the home button?" Nobody does the newspaper anymore. But back in the old days, when I was working for then Governor Bush, there was a big article about a business card. It was one of our staffers' business cards. And the reporter decided that Governor George W. Bush's name in the middle was too big and the employee's name was too small on it. So he tried to say that political purposes were being furthered using state funds. It was on the city-state section, bottom fold, lower than the fold. Didn't have more legs, but they still wrote a story about it. Perception is reality. And with reality TV not being even real, perception really is real. So if they get it wrong in their head, they're going to have it wrong in their head. Again, to maximize the results, focus on your message, avoid the legal gotchas, and win the campaign because you are the best candidate or because you're the best candidate that everybody wants to support and get behind. So, to summarize, and I'm just saying it one more time, perception is reality. Avoid the legal gotchas. And please aim for the center of the target. Some of the resources that you'll be provided with, these are the links. And I'm going to finish the story. He got out of jail at 11:30 on that Monday night. It was his mother's birthday. He didn't get to spend it with her. However, we were frantically trying to find out what this election fraud was. He had a personal financial statement that had been filed. Apparently, somehow, only page 1 arrived at the Ethics Commission. If he was receiving certified letters, it was to the address he provided that was at his mom's, and his mom was not, let's just say we don't know what happened to him. He had never heard that he was getting any certified letters. He never heard of anything. She was probably either refusing them or signing for him and throwing them away and forgetting about it. She may have had early onset Alzheimer's, we think, but beside the point, right? He didn't know. The Ethics Commission thought that he was basically ignoring them. So I tell this story because we barely got him. There had to be a court proceeding. He didn't have to be there. And it had to be dismissed here in Travis County because he didn't have page 2. So we got page 2 filed right away, got the Ethics Commission to say, yes, they got it. Yes, they got it. We got the charges, the warrant dismissed. We got an order saying he could leave, and he made it home to overseas. Did I mention he was from overseas? Did I mention he was a disabled military vet? He wanted to get back in time for his girlfriend's birthday. This all happened at Thanksgiving. I was telling the story to the commission. They thought they had been disrespected. They thought they had not been listened to. They thought they were ignored. When I started on this story and their blank faces were looking back at me, it was like crickets. What did y'all do when I said he was thrown in jail? Right? They did not do that. So then I complimented the commission staff for helping him get back home to his girlfriend. I had to change everything I was going to say. Perception is reality. Any questions? Thanks. Thank you.